Journalist Jennifer Haupt visited Rwanda 12 years after the genocide that killed up to 1 million people in 100 days. That life-changing trip inspired her debut novel, In the Shadow of 10,000 Hills, following 3 women looking for peace after the chaos and tragedy. Jennifer Haupt joins me now. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We were just talking about, in fact, you may have heard some of that. You've spent years putting this book together.
I have. It's
been 11 years. And you've learned a couple of things from that over the 11 years.
I have. I have a big kind of magnet on my refrigerator. It says, "Don't give up." And I post it on Facebook all the time with pictures of like champagne and different authors' books. And it's, you know, I just feel like if you're passionate about something, just don't give up, because it really can happen. You can like be on TV talking about your book.
11 years in writing this, and it's come out, and it's a huge success.
It's pretty good so far, knock on closest wood.
Yeah.
And I found a publisher, a small publisher who is brilliant and who believed in my book, and an agent who believed in my book. And so I just really feel like if you do the work, if you sit down, you do the work, whatever that work is, it'll happen, things will come.
Well, I think that's a very good bit of encouragement for all the aspiring writers, many very talented ones here in our area. So let's go back. What took you to Rwanda in the first place?
Yeah, I've been a journalist for over 25 years, and my specialty has been a focus on writing about people who basically try to heal their own depression and grief by reaching out to others, and that's always fascinated me. And so I thought going to Rwanda really fascinated me. I went to report on humanitarian aid workers and also to interview genocide survivors. And during my first week in Rwanda, I was going to be there for a month, and all 3 of my assignments I had for magazines fell apart. So I hired a guide to take me into the hills and to visit the small genocide memorials that were at churches and schools where people were taken and they thought they were going to be saved. They thought they'd be safe from the killings that were happening in their villages, and then they would go there and be slaughtered by the thousands. So at these places, as I'm sure you know, because I know you've been to Rwanda, yeah. There's bullet holes in the ceiling. I remember one place there was a statue of a Virgin Mary on the wall with rust-colored blood stains. And what really struck me was at each of these memorial sites, there was a guide who was a woman always, who was about my age at the time, around 40, 45. And their restitution was to be a guide at these memorial sites. And what really struck me is in going to these a dozen plus sites, I was always the only person there. It was a dozen years after the genocide, and people really hadn't started going to Rwanda to see the gorillas and so forth like they are now.
Which is a huge draw. Which
is a huge draw now. But at the time, people weren't really going there. Like, people thought it was really scary that I was going there. And so what came up for me in talking with these genocide survivors was my own family history, being Jewish and having relatives who were murdered during the Holocaust. I had been to Dachau in Germany 25 years earlier, and it had stuck with me how clean everything was there, how it was a huge museum, and it was very sterile. So there's 2 things that struck me, the sterility and also that there were thousands of people who visited Dachau every year. And like I said, I was the only one at these memorial sites. And I really wanted to tell the stories of the people that I had met. And I also wanted to tell my own story of connecting with these people. So the main protagonist in my story is a woman who's in her mid-30s, Rachel, and she goes to Rwanda to find her father, who had abandoned her 30 years earlier. And he is a photojournalist who went to Rwanda in search of the love of his life. And without talking too much about it, the book sort of goes back and forth. It covers a 40-year span from the civil rights era in Atlanta during the 60s, with an interracial affair between Rachel's father and another woman. And then it goes through to the year 2000 in post-genocide Rwanda, where Rachel goes to Rwanda and stays with her father's second wife. And yeah, it's always hard to tell how much to tell.
Interwoven stories, but what's interesting to me is that whenever you come in contact with something as horrifying as a genocide, or even the issues we were trying to tackle in the civil rights era, certainly for the Holocaust, you have to ask yourself, what would I have done in that circumstance? What causes people to behave in this way towards other human beings? And if I survived it, how would I cope with it? And so this is kind of a deep dive into forgiveness, reconciliation, which are separate processes and very deeply detailed, as you learn from Rwandans who have managed to do that over the past 20 plus years. So when we get to the end of this book, we've explored that topic, correct? And that has such application for all of us.
Well, and it's really, for me, it was more about what do you do when you can't forgive, when things happen, and things happen to all of us in our lives that you really can't forgive, and how do you move forward? Right. And in Rwanda, there's a greeting, amahoro, and it's a greeting that means literally peace, but since the genocide, it's taken on a whole broader meaning. And for me as a Jew, the closest translation is shalom in Hebrew, which also means peace. But it also means a sorrow for the past and a hope for the future. And so this idea for me of finding grace, secular grace, right, that's not related to religion, but finding grace when forgiveness isn't possible. Right.
Which is one of the ends of exploring forgiveness. You may or may not get there.
Yeah.
And then you go on, or if you do get there, what happens after that? And you've dedicated the book to everybody searching for amahoro, so that's a wonderful thing, because I think many of us at various levels are doing that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
and for
Margaret.
sharing that with us. Jennifer has book signings all across Western Washington, beginning with one this evening at Island Books on Mercer Island. You can find a complete list of her readings and more on the book on New Day's website. It's available all the normal places books are sold, right?
Yes.
Just go there and buy it. Coming up, the key to successful siting projects at home. People are tackling that after this quick break. Thank you so much.